solely from Liverpool, the approach and how they dealt with players when they first come in to how they leave was, for me, was first class. And that's something I take on my journey now, is how you commit and connect with the people. Let's just strip it back and let's not look at them as players. They're going to go up and grow up in society and they're going to become young men, and how we help and shape them as characters is really important. There's a massive weight on our shoulders as coaches to make sure that, okay, let's develop them as football players and let's talk about tactics and the fancy stuff, but let's make sure that we're installing values into them, being polite, being honest, being trustworthy, being a good teammate. What does that mean? Supporting someone when they're going through difficult times. It's got to go beyond the grass. It's got to go beyond playing football. It has to, for me.
Hello coaches, welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach interview. This week we are joined by Ray Sherwood, formerly assistant coach with Steven Gerrard at Al Attifaq FC. But before that, spent 9 years at Liverpool Academy as a coach and also as an analyst for their under-23 team. So we talk about the Liverpool culture, we talk about the role of analysis within that culture at Liverpool, and we also talk about Ray's move to Saudi Arabia and some fascinating insight around that. Love this interview. Please make sure you like, please make sure you subscribe. Thanks so much for the support. Here's Ray, enjoy. Ray, thanks so much for joining us today on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast. Really excited to chat.
Well, thanks for having me, Gary. It's a podcast I've been listening to and watching for quite a while. So, yeah, I'm really excited for you to ask me to come on, and looking forward to talking a little bit about football.
The first question, I want to start at Liverpool, and this is where I'm really excited to start this conversation. You had 9 years there, obviously outside looking in, the culture. I actually just did a post on LinkedIn about this. I didn't even think of connecting it to this conversation. But I did a post this morning, Pep and Linder's talking about the Melwood culture, and it's something that, again, it's probably football's version of the All Black culture over the last 5 years, and just everyone's fascinated by, from youth level right up to professional, it seems to be so well aligned. What was it like? What were some of the standout pieces of the culture for you?
Culture-wise, yeah, coming from Liverpool, it was, I'm being a Liverpool fan. I'm working at the club. It sounds kind of simple to say, but that feeling of belonging and the connection and the togetherness that was created was something really special. It was something that you felt soon as you come through the door. I was fortunate enough to play at Liverpool when I was a young lad from the ages of 9 and 10. And coming back there as a coach in my mid-20s, it still had the same feel. There were still a few faces around at the time. Michael Yates, won't mind me mentioning him. He was my coach when I was 9 and 10, and he was still working at the academy when I went back. So, and he was still displaying the same characteristics and wanting the same culture and speaking the same language as he was when I was a young boy. So, yeah, that feeling of togetherness, the connection, and it was just so important that you got that through to the players, and they understood the level of not expectation too much, certainly from a younger age, but just the feeling of being a part of Liverpool and being a part of the city and what football means for people there, because it's everything, whether you're a Liverpool fan or you're an Everton fan, just the feeling of football, it connects everyone. And coming into the club as I say, as a Liverpool fan and a lad from Liverpool, it was important to try and display that myself. There's obviously people coming in from all different parts of the world, and them understanding just what the club means to us, to the fans, to the players, it is so important, really.
That alignment, again, it's a word that's so overused today, isn't it? Alignment, everyone loves it. But it sounds like everything was aligned, and that something that I'm fascinated about today is as coaching fit almost, like does a personality and character fit an environment as staff and environments look to grow. So what were some keys, do you think, from someone like Alex Inglethorpe as he built up the staff? What do you think some of the the components of character and personality he looked for in staff members?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one I'm sure obviously Alex will answer better than I will, but I'll do a good version of it. And I can only speak for the staff that Alex hired. There was a great knowledge about the staff that was in the building. There was a real sense of experience around coaching and football and what it was to develop players. But most importantly, I felt, and it was something I feel, well, I'd like to think I brought, was personality. And that was something that was huge in all the staff that I worked with. How they came into the building, how they left the building. It doesn't matter what type of day it was or how the day was going. The minute the players came into the building, you got that feeling that they were here and there was excitement and there was a buzz in the building. And we wanted players to carry them characteristics over, show personality on the pitch. It was a massive value of the club, and Alex, displayed that massively, certainly in my time there. So yeah, I'd say knowledge, playing experience, but not only just playing. I think, whether it was from a teaching background or you came from a job outside of football, your knowledge of how to deal with people and knowledge of the game was really important. Your level of experience, but I'd definitely say personality was huge, and it was something that I felt I brought, the staff around me brought, and going onto the pitch to watch players play, seeing their personality come out was fantastic, and it comes out in the first team. Personality is huge. You could see with the manager at the time, Jurgen Klopp, just how much personality he brought to the pitch side, and that's reciprocal amongst the fans. They feed off that, and they love that. They get the buzz. So yeah, personality for me was huge.
I wonder, and I don't wonder, I do feel as if we're overlooking that today in a lot of environments when people, again, roll out coaching licenses and qualifications and degrees, that your ability to impact an environment is ultimately probably the biggest part of a culture at Liverpool. Like, what can you go a little bit deeper into? Is that energy level? Is that empathy? Like, what do you think is the common thread amongst all the coaches that you kind of interacted with there?
I think empathy is a real interesting one. Empathy for myself, so I'll talk about myself going through an academy process and coming out the other end. I was unfortunate I didn't make the grade in terms of getting a professional contract. So having that empathy with the players is huge, because you understand the journey, you understand what they're going through. But we were surrounded by staff who had gone through the journey and gone on to play for the first team. So empathy was huge. Being able to display that in your coaching and how you dealt with the boys on a day-to-day basis was really important. So for me, being empathetic towards what the lads are going through was significant, really, because the journey's so long and it's not always going to come out. You're not always going to come out the other end and play for Liverpool's first team. You might have to go on a different path, or you might have to come out the game altogether. So that's where I link it back to the connection and the feeling and the belonging of the club. Is it didn't matter where you ended up. There was always someone willing to speak to you. There was always someone on the other end of the call. Even now, I still speak to the likes of Michael Yates about things I'm going through in my life, and that's something that we carried through with us as staff. We would say to the players when they would join Liverpool from an early age at like 8 or 9, that this is a journey that you're going to go through in life, and it doesn't just stop when football stops. This is something where we'd like the relationship to continue into your life further down, and I think that's a massive part of it, because it shows you're authentic. It shows that you truly care about the player, the boy. Let's just strip it back and let's not look at them as players. Let's look at them as young boys, and they're going to go up and grow up in society, and they're going to become young men. And how we help and shape them as characters is really important, and it's a massive. There's a massive weight on our shoulders as coaches to make sure that okay, let's develop them as football players, and let's talk about tactics and the fancy stuff. But let's make sure that we're installing values into them. Being polite, being honest, being trustworthy, being a good teammate. What does that mean? Supporting someone when they're going through difficult times. So yeah, them sort of characteristics are embedded in staff there, and we'd like to think it would filter through to the players.
Yeah, I told you that the last time we chatted that I visited in 2017, and I went watched the session with Michael Beale, and afterwards he's like, right, we'll grab a bit of lunch, and he I always remember, I've told a few people this, that he parked me in the cafeteria and like apologized before. He's like, I'll get to you, but before I get to you, I've got to, and I was in a great actual position where I could watch and I could watch him work in the room where he was getting around people, and I'd never seen it before. And it was I'd always been kind of learning about coaching communication, how formal, and and he was just doing this in a lunch, and you could see there was a strategy behind it, and it was really, really cool to see.
It's got to go beyond the grass. It's got to go beyond playing football. It has to, for me, because young players of today give up so much of their time. Families give up so much of their time. Siblings, they're on the journey as well. You can't forget that a young lad at Liverpool or whichever academy it may be, they may have brothers and sisters, and the family members. They go on the journey, and the journey can be 10, 12 years long if players are fortunate. And it's 3 nights a week, it's 2 games of a weekend, it's traveling. There's a massive emphasis on the family and the support around the player. So for me, it has to go, and it has to come away from the grass. And I think Liverpool, and I'm sure it's still the same now because of the people that are still there, Liverpool were unbelievable at that. The aftercare, when you came in the building, is exactly the same as when you left the building. And that was something that was really important to me. It was a quote that Steve Highway once said, whether you're 9, 29 or 59, you're going to come into Liverpool and you're going to leave Liverpool. So how you come in and how you leave the building is really important. And then relationships that you build up over time are vital, really, to players and families. And it really does cement the level of support that you're going to give a player. And even to this day, I get a buzz out of parents calling me and asking me for advice, or players who are maybe 18, 19. They come on the texts now and they're asking questions. Should I do this? What should I do? And I'm sure it's the same for other staff. But that just shows along the journey you have had some impact. I'm not saying I was the biggest impact, far from it, but you've had some level of impact. And I think at the time at Liverpool, there wasn't a great deal of change amongst staff. I think that was a key as well for Alex. He kept the real core staff in place that went on this journey. So you would have coaches who, I use an example of Barry Lutus, who was under 12 coach, and he went on a journey. He's now the under 23s coach, and he's been in that position now for nearly 5 seasons. And the players he was coaching at 12, he was then coaching at 21. So for him to see the development and the journey and the ups and the downs, and being that support network for them, which is what you end up becoming once they get to 19 and 20, is so important, because players and parents, they have to trust you. They have to trust that you've got the best interests of them, and you want the best for them. Okay, we want them to play for the first team and all that type of stuff, but we just want good people to come out the game. And there's a lot of media, there's a lot of media around how young players are treated and the work that goes on. But I can say, solely from Liverpool, the approach and how they dealt with players when they first come in to how they leave was first class. And that's something I take on my journey now to whichever club I go to, is how you commit and connect with the people.
Hello coaches, we'll take a quick break here. As always, thank you so much for all the support of Modern Soccer Coach. 51,000 subscribers on YouTube, phenomenal 94,000 on Facebook, 52,000 I believe on Instagram. So all the support on all the platforms is huge, and we really, really appreciate it. Every like, every share, every time you post something to a coaching colleague and say, hey, listen, check this out, it helps grow the channel. So I really appreciate you doing that. Before you leave today, please make sure you like the interview that you're listening to. Again, it goes a long way to keep promoting it and keeping it out there. In return, we do our best to keep growing the content, putting out more content, and keeping the content at as high a level as we can. And speaking of that, we have an upcoming free coach development event coming up this Friday, where Michelle Aragona of Meteland, one of the top teams in the world with data and set pieces, he is going to talk about a scientific and holistic approach. He's going to do a presentation Friday, free for all modern soccer coaches. Please check that out. I will put the link below in the description of this podcast. Please go ahead and register. I think we're up to 400 plus coaches who are signed up for that there. So please don't miss out. If you don't make the live event, it's no problem. Within 24 hours, we send out a replay to all the coaches who registered. So just go on there, register, make sure you don't miss it. And also don't forget to give this interview a like. Thank you so much for all the support, Modern Soccer Coach. Back to Ray. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Now, I mean, I probably sound like a Liverpool fan, but I couldn't despise Liverpool more when I was growing up. I was a United fan in Ireland, Northern Ireland, you know, like if Liverpool were dominant, I was desperate for United to beat them. But what's interesting is I watched that Ratcliffe interview with Neville last week, and they're talking about, you know, the ex-pros, how you look after your people, giving them some lunch. I was on the road, so I listened to that one, and then I listened to John Aldridge under the cosh. And it's just, again, the affinity as a Liverpool man, playing for the club, going through it. But you can feel it. The club actually looks after players on the back end as well, which I would never have thought was important.
There's a big credit there to Alex. He was massive in terms of getting ex-players back in. And again, we talked about connection and affinity to the club. Bringing the likes of Robbie Fowler in, bringing the likes of Steve McManaman, Rob Jones, Steven Gerrard came back, obviously, to coach the under-18s. Having them figures and icons for young players to look up to is massive. And for staff as well, to be able to tap into that sort of knowledge and be in the canteen and sitting next to these people and being able to pick the brains and ask them questions about their journeys and go on, what do you think about this? Or I've got a problem here around this sort of player. Or how did you deal with this? Even just having half an hour with the likes of Robbie Fowler around how much he practiced finishing. He could talk for hours and hours about the level of practice he would have gone through to get to where he obviously ended up. And it's just fascinating to be able to hear that. And as I say, I mentioned Steve Highway before. Alex brought Steve Highway back in, which was a stroke of genius, really, because he was huge for players, parents, but he was huge for staff. Some of his stories and some of his experiences, you pay to listen to it. And I was in a fortunate position at the time to be in and around that and to just soak it up and make notes and go home. And you know, I go home to my granddad and he'd ask me what my day was like, and I'd say I've just had half an hour with Steve Highway there on the grass, or I've just had my lunch with Steve Highway, and he'd just be like, you are, because for him, you know, Steve Highway was his idol. So coming home and being able to share them stories with your family was just unbelievable, and probably didn't realise the impact it was having on me. It's more when you were to, as I say, I was having a conversation with my granddad and he would be just blown away by it. So what? So you sat there and Sir Kenny Dalglish comes in for a coffee or a cup of tea. You got Steve Highway, and it sounds like I'm name dropping a little bit, but that was the culture that Alex created. And the thing I loved about it, that there was no senior like figures, there was no like ego around it. Everyone was equal, everyone was open to discussion, everyone's opinion mattered. They would ask your opinion. Sometimes you're thinking, oh, why is he asking me this question? Surely he knows the answer. But I think it just showed the level of, you know, humbleness that was displayed amongst the people that were brought in. And again, all credit to Alex Inglethorpe at the time, because I don't think many clubs were doing that. You spoke about Manchester United, and we would always go to play them. And you got the sense when you arrived at Manchester United's academy that there was a real sense of history, and you'd see it on the pictures on the wall, and there'd be people watching who you think, oh, he's an ex-player, or there'd be someone coming in to give a chat to the players. I heard a story once that a young player in his under-18 season, he had a serious injury, and the next day he was met by Ryan Giggs, who gave him a signed shirt, and I think he signed his professional contract at the time. And the boy it was a real serious injury. I think it was a leg break, and I took that and I was like, whoa, that's unbelievable. That shows the level of care going on at Manchester United. You know, for Ryan Giggs to turn up there and give him his professional contract, what that must mean to the player and the boy, and that's a memory he'll, keep with him for the rest of his life. So I think football clubs across England are doing that. It's not just Liverpool, but I can only speak on my experiences there. But as I say, when you go to the likes of Manchester United, you'd always get that sense of, yeah, it's a real close club. The academy means a lot. You can see that with players who come through. The heritage is there, and Liverpool's, no different. I think the academy has always been kind of pivotal in the club. It's always been seen as a one club mentality, even dating back to the likes of Fowlers and Owens and players like that. The need for the academy player coming through, certainly at a club like Liverpool, has always been there, because I think the fan, and as I say, I was a fan, I'd sat on the stands. There's nothing more you want to see than a player who's come from the local area. I'm from Bootle. Steve McManaman came through. He was from Bootle. So for me, sitting in the stands and watching someone who came from my area, I was just like, wow, this is unbelievable. He's come from where I live, and maybe it is. Maybe it can happen. Maybe you can actually go and support the club and play for the club that you love. So I think it's important that these clubs carry that tradition on, because it means so much to the people who go and watch them, and it means so much for the young players as well.
At what stage of as you're going into the academy, when you were starting, how did you develop, or how did you move into the analysis piece? What was that process like?
It was an interesting time, really. I didn't quite realise it at the time, but now looking back, I realise just how amazing it was to be around that environment. It was Tim Jenkins, who was the head of analysis at the time, and I know he worked closely with the likes of Alex. He came through an analytical background, but he was the assistant coach for a number of age groups, and he created a culture that basically aligned and brought through an analyst who would just sit and watch the games. He basically merged the two together and said, well, you're watching the games, you're coding the games, you're coding the individual clips, and you can coach. Surely it makes sense for us to join that role and bring it to the grass. And for me, they were pioneers in that sort of development, really, because I'd not seen too much of it going on at the time. And it opened my eyes, because I came in and I thought, I'm just a coach and he's an analyst, and they work in the fitness department and they're psychologists, and it wasn't like that at all. It was very much a unified and togetherness amongst all the staff, so that you had a real clarity around what it is that you were doing. You were able to have discussions with the head coach, and he would give you the autonomy to go out and take sessions and work with the players. And then I think it also brought to life for the players. Right, I'm watching my clips, but now where's the analyst who's also a coach? He's on the grass working with me, and it just made that relationship stronger. So for me, as I say, I was working solely in coaching, and then an opportunity was put to me by Alex to go and work with Mark Bridge Wilkinson, who was the 15s and 16s head coach. He's now the under-18s manager. and it was a dual role, and I just loved it because it gave me an insight into the game which I'd never really looked too deeply into. But I actually started to go away and think, I'm coaching players here, and I actually know that when I'm talking to the players, I know exactly what type of moves they're making, where the strengths are, where we can help them improve. And I knew the players knew as well, because when you're sitting with them and you're talking with them and you're showing them the clips and then you're going out and working with them, they got a real sense of clarity. They got a real sense of, no, these know exactly what's going on here. And I felt like the relationship between certainly myself and the player was really, really strong. And that was my first insight to it, really. And it brought on my coaching to another level, because it just gave me more clarity. It gave me more understanding. It made me more hungry. It made me more obsessed to become better. And I was working in an environment at the time where all the analysts were coaching. Jonathan Robinson was coaching. Scott Mason was coaching. As I say, Tim Jenkins was coaching. And I was like, there's some mileage in this. This is something that is probably going to take off. And technology was growing at a vast rate, and players were loving the technology. And with the use of iPads and coming in and workshops that were going on at the time, yeah, as I say, technology was taking over, and I thought, I'm going to have to get on board here and really embrace this and learn and develop. So that, as I say, I done that, and I loved every single minute of it. So that was my first insight to the dual role, if you like.
The piece there about the players, and as this kind of breakthrough, and I mean, I feel it, because when technology was coming in, it was kind of the science came in first, then video came in, and all of a sudden coaches were like, oh wow, this is amazing. But I can imagine then the players, the environment not shifts, but maybe modifies, but like how much education was going with the players on how to consume this or deal with this, or how did the academy work through that?
Yeah, I think one of the important members of staff at the time was Dan Spirit, who's working with the first team now. He was overseeing the YDP in the foundation phase, if you like, and how he created that environment was fascinating. Really, he would, as I say, create workshops. The workshops would be on aligning the playing philosophy, but it'd also be on an individual basis. He would have clips from European football. He would have clips from first team football. He would have their own players' clips, and just how he captivated their imagination and bringing it to the grass again was something that I was just in awe of, really, in terms of how he went about his processes. And he's another one. He was just obsessed with watching football. He must have watched every age group. He must have watched every player. You could ask him a question about a boy in the under-9s, and he'd be able to just go and tell you exactly what he needs to work on. And you could ask him about a boy in the 14s, and he'd tell you the same. And I was just like, whoa, there's levels to this kind of analysis and coaching, and the guys I was working with at the time, they were ahead of me, and probably still are, really. I was like, I need to upskill quickly to get on board with these guys.
How does the analysis process work through the ages? Like if you start at that, you mentioned they're under 9s, and then there's an under 14s. Are they getting more? Is there a different type of processes per age group, or is there a uniform across the board, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think there's alignment from top to bottom, but I think as the players were getting older, we use the phrase of maybe adding 5%. So as they get older, you give them a little bit more. They've got access to a little bit more. Younger down, it's just about playing. It was just about playing. It was just about fun. The young players at 9 and 10 would want to come in, and they'd want to see Ronaldo, Messi. They'd want to see goals from them sort of players, or if it was a defender, it might be a Sergio Ramos, or a Luis Suarez, whoever it may be. As it got a little bit older, it become a little bit more kind of refined to the player. But the video and the analysis process was always closely linked to the player's identity. We never came too far away from that when working with the player. And as they got a little bit older, it was a little bit more, all right, we maybe need to show a little bit more of the team, but we didn't deviate too much from the individual. I think like once they got to 18, I think there was a natural kind of, as I say, adding the 5%. So you got access to the likes of Opta, for example. You got access to, what would be now StatsBomb, which give a little bit more data and give a little bit more kind of insights in terms of pass completion and, percentages and duels won and all that type of stuff. But we were very clear, certainly at Liverpool, that we can't go too far away from working with the player, working with his identity. What can he do? Let's keep showing him what he can do. And yeah, then once you get to kind of 23 or 21s, there's obviously an element around data. Players want to see more. They want access to more. And we were fortunate at the time that we had all that infrastructure in. But as I say, younger down, it was more just about playing. And when the players first signed, again, this was something that Spiro would do or Robbo would put together. They'd have like signing videos. So it'd just be when they were in the underage, just all the best bits. And on signing day, they'd make a real fuss of the player signing in terms of showing them the highlights. And as they got a little bit older, as I say, it'd be a little bit more around what the team were doing, best practice videos, monthly videos around the age group, but also best practice of what was going on in Europe. Because as I say, younger down players just wanted to see their idols. They just wanted to see lads in the first team who were scoring or skills or. So yeah, the supervision was always there, but we didn't want it too serious, and we didn't want it too. Serious is probably the best way. We didn't want it too serious too early. And also I think there's an element of kind of keeping the players hungry and keeping them kind of humble and keeping them kind of level-headed, if you like, and a little bit more as you go through the age groups. You naturally get a little bit more, and it just kept that hunger and it kept that kind of desire to keep progressing and developing. And also as well, I think like if you're giving them too much too soon, children can get bored quickly. So by the time they get to 13, 14, 15, they've seen everything. Where'd you go with it? So actually keeping that hunger and keeping the excitement going was really important. And as I say, I used the phrase of the 5%, but that was something that was put to me to make sure that the under 15 should be getting a little bit more than the under 12s, but they shouldn't be getting as much as the under 18s, and the under 18 shouldn't be getting as much as the first team. And again, that was something that came through from Alex, and that was in every department. So again, creating that kind of humbleness and desire to keep improving and learning was always at the forefront of the coaches and the analysts' minds, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes the tail can wag the dog. Sometimes player profiles, IDPs, can become quite limiting, and all of a sudden the player has to fit in this, especially today where they've got these metrics, and it can become a wish list of what a 6 should do and a 4 should do. When you're looking at a player and you're doing it the other way around and you're saying the identity comes first, and it's a Connor Bradley type player where you can play in multiple positions, and who knows what this game's going to look like in 5 years in terms of flexibilities and shapes. How does that process work when you have such flexibility at such a high level?
I think, and again at Liverpool, the lines of communication were really clear. So you mentioned Connor Bradley. So when Connor Bradley came in, it was Matt Newbury who was the chief scout at the time. He's still there now, Matt. He will have been the first to have laid eyes on Connor, I'm sure, and bring him in and bring him to the underage group. I think it was Michael Yates and Tom Culshaw, I think, were the coaches at the time. Jonathan Robinson was the analyst. So they'd be more equipped to speak about how he came in the building. But I used the recruitment one because I think when players are in the system for a long time, you can get caught up with fancy words and fancy terminology, and they've got to do this and they've got to do that, and the trend's this. But sometimes asking the question, why did we sign him? What did we see in the boy? Because at some point they will have been scouted. At some point someone will have seen them playing at grassroots or playing for the school team or whatever it is. So actually just going back through the scouting reports are really important, and it's something I used to do. Why have we signed this player? Right, let's go back through his scouting report. Right, he's athletic, he can run, he's playing up front, he's playing at the back, he's playing all over the pitch. So it would make sense to just allow that to keep happening naturally. Some players, it's really clear, I think. Some players want to play in a position. They want to play as a striker or a midfielder or a defender. And that might be quite clear to some players. Other players, it is different. And that's where I think at Liverpool, we were really clear on it. It's got to be about the boy. It can't be, well, we play 4-3-3 and he's got to be this and he's got to be that. Because sometimes you'd be looking to try and shape something that wasn't maybe there. So actually just having access and having the freedom to allow the boys to express themselves in different positions was key. I think with Connor, he just had a natural enthusiasm to play football. He was, as I say, he was up and down. He was all over the pitch. He was all action. And as he got a little bbit older, when he was playing for Northern Ireland, he was playing up front. You know, so for him to come back to Liverpool and us to say, no, Connor, you're going to be this, that's not really fair on the boy. So actually allowing him to express himself, allowing him to be flexible in different positions, probably helped them out and made them become more adaptable, which is, again, another key ingredient to what Alex would want us to have when dealing with players, is to make them adaptable. Because when Connor came in when he was 13, 14, who knows who the manager's going to be? So by the time Connor got to the first team, Liverpool might have been playing 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, 4-3, whatever formation they were. And I think that put him in real good stead, because when he got to 21, he fell into the right back position from an early age. But when he was playing right back, he went out on loan. And I remember him going out on loan to Bolton. I was the analyst at the time. And at the time, Bolton were playing a back five with wing backs. And the question was always, can he do it? Can he do it? Will he be able to do it? And we were confident that Connor could go and do it, because he displayed adaptability throughout his time at Liverpool, playing in various positions and playing in a back three or a back five and being a wing back probably wasn't going to be any different for him. I think playing wide right, as he did as well during his journey, put him in good stead, because playing for a team at Liverpool who wanted to dominate the ball, for example, he often found himself in the final third. So being there and actually being able to work on his crossing, being able to work on his final ball, his shot, mix that into the fact that he played up front, he probably had a lot of attributes that allowed him to excel in the final third. So, as I say, that was for Connor, but there might be another boy in the system who scores goals and just wants to be up front. And, so for example, you wouldn't move that away from him. You just keep harnessing that and nurturing that along to make sure that they get every possible experience of playing up front in a 2, playing up front in a 1, playing behind the striker, playing in a front 3, finishing off the left foot, finishing off the right foot. All that type of stuff would have gone into, a player's IDP if they were playing up front. It wouldn't have just been, right, we need to work on this. Okay, he's mastered that now. We need to work on that. Now we need to work on this. I was having this conversation a couple of weeks ago with Jonathan Robinson, because I said on the previous chat that we had, I've kept everything from when I first started coaching. And some of the players who are playing in the first team now, so Jarell Quansah, for example, I coached Jarell when he was 10. And at the time, they would have had a very basic IDP, to call it, or a learning objective, call it what you will. And when you filter it back and you go back through what he was doing, his was just line-breaking passes. But, it wasn't too dissimilar to what he might be doing now in terms of playing through the lines, or, his passing ability playing out from the back, or it might be 1v1 defending. I don't think it changes too much, and I don't think it should. Because I think, again, if you go back to why you brought a player into the building, I think a player's identity will often stand out to you as to why they're there. And we were always big on that in terms of what can the player do? Let's work with what's the player going to do? What's going to get him into the first team? What's going to keep him on the grass? What's the manager going to like versus what's he not going to like? We never ask them questions. You might say we can help improve and develop certain areas of the game, but I should imagine, I didn't work with him, but I should imagine Trent, for example, was displaying passing ranges and his ability to cross and shoot from a younger age. I would imagine. So I don't think it changes too much, and I don't think we should get caught up too much in IDPs. One thing I would say is at Liverpool, it was really consistent. And the handover with the coach at the end of the season was really important. So that was something Alex wanted. Each coach would sit with the next age group coach and go through the age group, go through the players in the age group and work with them and show what they were working on. And again, it was just about that player, the coach picking that up and working with that player on that, because I think the game's complicated enough. Coaches don't need to complicate it. You just need to make it simple for the players.
You mentioned there about Bradley fascinates me, obviously, with his background, and I always ask people about him, and a couple of the Northern Ireland staff as well. Everyone always talks about that enthusiasm and the humility and the personality, and I wonder if you mentioned there about you can overcomplicate it, then you can go down a data road that if it's not measurable, it's not important. But how important is those elements of resilience, hunger, desire? And at an academy like Liverpool, you can kind of see where the playing style merges to those characteristics. But if a player lacks in any of those things, what happens?
I think that's where the support comes in from the coach. I think we can obviously engage them, we can challenge them, but I think when a player is going through times of maybe, growth, or they're going through a difficult period in their own personal life, I think that's where your support comes in, and that's where the chats with the player, you have reviews with the player, you have parents meetings, and I think that process is really important. I think it's really important in a time when a player's not doing so well. So you might have a boy who's 9, 10, 11 doing really, really well, and then all of a sudden 12, 13, 14, he's not doing so well. So again, I go back to what I said at the start in terms of Liverpool and the connection and the importance we have as coaches. Support is massive. Support around them times of when the players are growing, and we're going to have to sometimes just stand back and let them develop, let them grow. Some players who've come through the system at certain times, they will have struggled. They will have been trying to find their body. They've been able to make the pass they want to make, or run as quick as they want to run. I think that's where the experts have come into the game now around, the fitness elements, and you've got psychologists. I think tapping into them and being able to ask, we'll go on then, what might they be going through? Because not only physically, I think emotionally, players and young boys in general, they're going through quite a lot during adolescence. So having an awareness of that and an understanding will only help you support the player. And then I go back to the player's identity. So what was the player's identity? Can we help bring him back to what he was doing? Is that possible for him to get back to the level? And that's where I think the longevity in academy does have a real positive impact, because it allows players to go through that. You may just have an example of a player who's just, top of the group and just goes top of the group all the way through. But in my experience, there's always been a time with a player where they've needed that support, and that's often the strength of the club, and how you give that support. And who gives that support. And sometimes if you're the coach of an under-16 team and a player's going through a difficult time, we've had examples where we go and get the under-12 coach to come and speak with the player because he had a great time with that coach. Well, he'd be best fit to go and speak to the player and have a chat with him and speak to his parents. And we always had that sort of freedom to support the player during them difficult times.
All right, let's move. The move to Saudi Arabia, senior football. I mean, that's it. The more I started like putting these questions together, the more I'm like, that's a massive decision. What were some things that I guess that made it go, I can't pass this up?
The weather.
Yeah, that'll do it.
When I looked online and I seen what the weather was, I thought, right, that's it. I'm getting myself over there. Them cold nights in Kirby. So the weather was one. No. I think I'd probably come to a point in my time when I was probably ready for maybe a different challenge. I've been at a club, I've been at Liverpool, as you say, for a long period of time, and I'd gone through the age groups, and there was my own kind of like hunger to go and see what it was like in not only football teams but a different part of the world. And when that opportunity came up, it was one of excitement, really, and not just to go and work in first team football. I've always had from an early age, just me as a person, I've always had that kind of adventure. I've always wanted to kind of see the world, and as well as the football side of things, actually being able to go out and see a different part of the world was a massive kind of pull for me. From an early age in coaching, I coached out in America, and going out and seeing different parts of the world is something that I've always wanted to do in my life. If you just park up football for a minute. So when that opportunity came, that was a huge factor in terms of going out and seeing a different culture, learning a new language, working with a different group of staff, seeing a different version of football, and educate myself as much as I possibly could, really.
You mentioned there at the start about Liverpool, and you've mentioned about 3 to 4 people who are now working at the higher end of Liverpool analysis and running the show. So I imagine the processes were fairly consistent. When you go to a club that's in a league that's building and growing, what does that analysis department look like when you get in there?
Yeah, I think to answer the first part of the question, I think from the very top at Liverpool all the way through to the younger ages, clarity was probably one of the strengths, and the analysis department was so clear in what they wanted and how they run processes, and that filtered from the very top and came through the likes of Tim Jenkins and Dan Spearick for me. So going to a new environment and a club I'd never really heard of in terms of Al Ettifaq and a league, it was gaining on them experiences, and I probably didn't realise at the time how much you've learnt and how much you've been privy to, if you like. Because when I turned up at Ettifaq, there was a part-time analyst who came with his own camera. So going from an institute where you've got laptops, sports code licenses, you've got IP cams, you've got StatsBomb, Opta, research pages, everyone's got everything to a certain degree, to an environment where that wasn't in place. So for me, it was bringing on them experiences and trying to implement them into a club. And I probably learnt more about myself during that time than I ever really did, because, as I say, when you rock up somewhere and you're looking for IP cams or certain type of cameras, or where's your sports code licenses, where's your laptops, you've then got to really strip it back. Right, what do we need? What's important? What's going to help the team? What does the manager need? What do the players need? And it was very much like that from day one. The club were fantastic for me in terms of support, and they wanted to get the club up to a level that would compete and rival that of a European side. So that level of support was there. But again, it was gathering the experience that I've been through to think, well, that's what Liverpool look like. Can I now create a version of that at a different club? And that was the challenge for me.
Yeah, common challenge for analysts is that sports code license, isn't it? You're always looking for one or two more.
Yeah, you'd always need a couple more. But again, at Liverpool, and it's something I took to Etifak, was at Liverpool in the academy, which I thought was really good from the likes of Alex, was it wasn't just, okay, you want a license, you can have a license. You almost had to prove why you need a license, and that upskilling of a coach and being able to use sports code was really important, because when I was then given a budget, I then asked them sort of questions, right? If we've only got 5 licenses, who needs the licenses? Why do we need 5? Do we need 5? Can we have 2? Or is it possible to get 10? Well, that's great in the perfect world, but we wasn't in that perfect world. So who needs them? Why do we need them? Were the questions that I was asking myself. And then it was about saying to the staff, look, this is an environment where we're going to have to all upskill, and we're all going to have to kind of get on board with sports code and how we use it. I was fortunate at the time that a couple of the staff who came out knew how to use sports code, so that was really beneficial to me. But yeah, asking them sorts of questions and, dealing with budgets and not just going, well, let's just go and buy this and buy that, and then all of a sudden there's nothing left, is not really the way I wanted to go about it. So having that kind of forefront of how can we best utilize what we've got was really important to me.
Managers use analysts in different ways. Obviously, during the week, it's probably quite similar in terms of the breakdowns and the scout and the prep work and the meetings. But on game days, there's a wide range of people that I chat to. Some use them beside them, some use them at a distance, some have them in the changing rooms getting ready for the half time. Where was the majority of your work with Steven Gerrard on a game day?
Yeah, on a game day, I mean, he was excellent at giving staff autonomy, and he was excellent at giving staff a platform in the room they needed. On a game day, it will be about supporting them in terms of live feed down to the bench, communication down to the bench, clips at half time if we needed them. Sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes it was just for the manager to look at so he could relay the message. Sometimes we would show them on a screen. Sometimes it'd be individual. Sometimes it was, right, the whole team doesn't need to see this. So a coach may just pull a player and show a certain instance in a game, or it might be a set piece that maybe needs tweaking. But the manager was really, inclusive and really open at using technology, and he embraced the technology. He'd been using the technology in his previous jobs anyway, but he was an advocate of using video, but making sure that we don't just use it for using its sake, making sure that it needs to be right. And sometimes it's a case of coming in the dressing room and telling the players directly without no video, and that's the skill of the manager, I would say, and having that feel and know-how of what's needed. And then after the game, the usual, giving all the staff the game, making sure that they've got all the kind of instances they need, and then start the process then for the review. So the game days were, as I'm sure for all analysts, were full on, but really engaging for me. And I learned loads about myself again, and I learned loads about working with different manager, different coaches. Because as I say, it's not always right. Let's just show video for show video's sake, and I'm a believer in that as well. As I know, working in the analysis department, but I think it's got to be right. I think what you're showing's got to be right. The length of the clip has got to be right. So, do you show 10 clips? No, probably not. Does the clip just need to be 10 seconds long? Is it a positive clip? Is it a clip for development? They're all questions that need to be asked. And in the short space of time of half time, for example, you know, you've got to kind of make them decisions quickly. And I was fortunate to be in the presence of a manager who was really skilled in that, knowing what was needed and knowing how to get that message across to the players.
It made me think of that, because sometimes you do think that in the analysis, you do think video is where the answer is, but the ability to make the decision of when not to use it and to impact with personality, that's a skill. That's a really good skill.
Yeah, that's a skill that our manager possessed. Not only analysis, but on the day-to-day, you know, his experience probably as a player and his experience in management will have given that insight and that kind of view of, right, I know what this needs now. But I was very fortunate that he was extremely skilled in that department, and it made the job easier for me. And we were never a staff of, you know, if you're not showing video, then you're not doing your job. That wasn't the case, and you were never made to feel like that. But I always made sure that you were ready if called upon. I would work closely with Jonathan Robinson, who would be on the bench, and we'd probably be in contact with each other, and we'd have a feel about how the game was going. So he would also have a view of what maybe was needed, and we'd always have clips ready. But as I say, you were never, or I was never, felt like, you know, pushed out if you weren't, you know, involved in that process, because it's not about us. It's not about the analysis department. It's about what's needed at that time to get the message on, to try and get the best result for the players and the team.
Yeah, but people also fail to realise as well from outside looking in is, if you're in an environment with 30, 40, 50,000 fans and it's an emotional game and there's pressure, the ability to stick on a video at halftime and have professional footballers in the space that they're in go into learning mode and take that on and be effective. It's just like, again, you got to manage the emotions in that there, and that doesn't always align to video.
It doesn't, and again, that comes with the skill of the manager. I think, me personally, I think the video can help clear up a few things that isn't necessarily an opinion of the assistants or the manager. So actually the player's seeing it himself, and most players in professional football, once they're seeing it, they know. So sometimes it can help. Well, I feel it can help with that, in terms of, this isn't my view of how we're playing, or this isn't what I look at this for 10 seconds. Tell me what you think. Right, I get it. Move on. Or sometimes it is, I think this, I think that, and we need to do this. And again, that's this. I keep saying this, the skill of the manager. So, yeah, we used to liken the half time. What I did, my own analogy, was kind of like a pit stop in Formula One. You know, it comes in, the car comes in, you've got, in their world, they've got milliseconds to decide what needs to be done. There is no time for, well, I think this and I think that, and you should show this, and changes, tyre. It's right, this is the process, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. Are we all good? Yeah, let's move. And you haven't really got time for humming and ahhing and, well, this and well that. It's right, what do we think? Are we all agreed? Right, let's go.
I love that. Love that. All right, last couple for you. How would you describe the football there? Was it slower, more transitional? I mean, coming from England.
One thing I didn't account for, and I know I said it before jokingly about the weather, was the humidity. And the humidity wasn't everywhere. So you've got a style of football and you've got a way of playing. But in extreme heat and extreme humidity, there's elements where you've got to adapt your playing style, and there's elements of when you've got to change in certain moments. And you go and play in a stadium where there was no humidity, and in fact you were at altitude, and that would have different effects. So dealing with them was really interesting for us, and it was something that you basically initially you're learning on the job, really, because you'd not seen too much of the league. The football, I actually thought was really good. I was surprised in terms of the level, because I didn't really know too much about the level at the time. But then we're going to play teams, and they've got Firmino's playing, St. Maximum's playing, Benzema's playing. You've got Sadio Mane's playing, but also at other teams, you've got players like Nkudu, who plays for the Mach, Sakala, who's another player who plays for Al Fire, and these sorts of players who are experienced European players. Igalo is another player you come up against. So you're playing a team, and all of a sudden you're up against Igalo. Well, he's got experience of playing in the Premier League and Manchester United. So I think when you're in it, you realise that the level of player is there, and I think it's growing, and it'll get better and it'll get stronger. And even for us, the players that we have playing for us, you know, the level of player is growing, and the coaches that are there, you can see there's a real hunger to get better. There's a real desire from the league to improve and constantly challenge. And obviously they've got the World Cup coming, which I know they're all prepared for, and that'll be a fantastic occasion. But the league's getting stronger and has got stronger, and it got stronger during my time. So going up to play a team who you think maybe is near the bottom, I've got players in there and they can hurt you and they can dominate the ball. And yeah, for me, it was a fantastic learning experience, certainly from that side of it.
We've got you obviously in between roles at the minute, so you're preparing for the next step. What does that look like when we talk in the last conversation we had? You're talking about kind of, you know, reviews and overlooking work and, you know, reaching out to people, because sometimes you get stuck in that washing machine a day to day. So what's been some aspects that you're looking at again reviewing or improving?
Yeah, as I said when we spoke last time, it's probably the first time I've been out of work, and it's been the first time I've been able to reflect on my time at Liverpool, reflect on my time at Etihad, and work on myself first before I start looking outside and what can I improve on, where can I get better, where do I need to sharpen up, and what processes worked for me. Then kind of looking on the bigger picture, what processes worked as a group of staff, what processes maybe didn't. And you just don't get that time when you kind of game to game and you're in season. So yeah, I think I said to you, I've a liking this time to being back in lockdown, where I've had to kind of find structure in my day, which is, you know, interesting, because before lockdown, you know, having that kind of what do I do when I wake up, I didn't really have it in my life. So lockdown has given me that. So now I've got structure in my day. You know, you read a book, you read or listen to podcasts, go to the gym, and go back over my meetings, go back over games, look for solutions in games that you thought were really good, teams you played against that had solutions. Maybe it was how they build, how they played out from goal kicks, how they press goal kicks. Right, that's going in the file. Right, we need to make notes of that. Really like that. When we came up against that system, did we have a solution for that? No. Right, okay, we need to find a solution for that. And then in amongst all that, I've been doing my sport and directorship masters, which has given me a real focus. I've just finished doing an essay, so that's kept me busy for the past couple of days. But that's been a real good focus for me, and certainly something longer term. It's where I want to go with my journey. So being able to speak to people who are in them roles, and, you know, go on podcasts and listen to people and hear their stories and their journeys about how you manage and how you lead and how you speak to people in different cultures, and how you align clubs. I know you mentioned before this word keeps coming up, but it's really important, and there's no getting away from that clubs do need alignment, and clubs need clarity from the top to the bottom. Clubs need alignment from the academy to the first team. So for me, yeah, I've been trying to keep myself busy during that time, reading and researching and studying.
Yeah, brilliant. It's something you said in our last conversation as well that I thought was outstanding, was you said about sometimes, again, you don't keep notes. when you're in these and you look back and you forget as a coach, but you keep every single thing in the hard drive or in the laptop?
Yeah, it's something that I don't really know why I started to do it. I think initially, when I was at Liverpool, we always used to keep our sessions in folders, and once things moved on to the PMA, everything become electronic. So all this paper and all these sessions were kind of just in folders, and I was like, a kid in a candy shop. I was like, I'll take that. I'll have a look at that. You just never know when you might need it, and I think it's great. It was great for me at the time because it enables you to look back. Well, what was Conor Bradley doing when he was 16? What was another player, Curtis Jones, doing when he was 14, 15? And very quickly you can forget. You might have a decent memory, or you might be able to recall, but actually, what did the session look like? How many players were in the session? Was it, what type of session was it for in terms of tactical periodization, if you like? But yeah, I've kept absolutely everything, and I keep everything on a hard drive, and I just think it's important. I've kind of thought, when you're in school and you're coming through school, at the end of school, you get given this kind of big file, almost like record of achievements, if you like. And you open things up and you see things that you've done from like 10 years ago. And your parents probably want to see all that type of stuff. And I'll probably have aligned it to that, really, of just keeping everything, because you don't know when you're going to need something. You don't know when you're going to need to look back. You don't know kind of like what you've been through. So for me, keeping everything and making notes and keeping all my notes is really important, because I've got books and books now in the wardrobe, and some of the technical meetings that went on at Liverpool, and I was involved. I wasn't kind of leading them, or probably wasn't contributing to them. There was people in there who, we've mentioned on this call, but there was experts in the field speaking about youth development, and I'm there just scribbling notes down, and you can forget. And for me to be able to like pick them books up now and go back through in 2016, I'm looking at what a certain coach has said and how they've said it, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, that was powerful at the time, and it's still powerful now. And if I didn't have it with me, I'd probably forget. So I would encourage all members of staff to do that, to get yourself a hard drive or keep all your sessions, and because you should be proud of the work that you've done, and you never know when you're going to need it again. I think people can come in and make notes, Gary, and people can come in and look as though they're taking the information on, but I think it's what you do with that information that's important. That's what I say. If you go into a PowerPoint presentation, or you go in somewhere and you listen to a guest speaker and you're writing notes down, that's fine. But what do you do with them notes? Do they become part of you and your practice? Do you reflect on them? Or do they just go and gather dust? And as I say, this time has given me a real opportunity to pick them books up and go back through some stuff and unearth some messages. And there's some fantastic stuff in there. And they're almost like books that people would buy, really, because not stuff that I've done, but messages in there from people that have spoken, and you think, wow, this is top quality coaching and education. And yeah, I would definitely, as I've said, definitely keep everything that you've got. It's important.
For a young, again, coach / analyst in this role, it's who is looking, either coming in one way or the other with a heavy analysis and looking to complement with coaching, or a coach who's detail oriented and good on the laptop. I mean, that's fairly common today. What advice would you have for them as they look to not just merge the roles, but like make an impact at youth development with an evidence-based approach, with objective information, and get the grass right as well?
My first point would be to listen, to listen to what's being said from the experts around. I think and I had a little bit of this in me, and I've had to learn over the years. There's a tendency to come in and think that you've got all the answers. I think going into a room and knowing that you're not the smartest person in the room is always a good start. So I think it just gives you a good sense of humility, if nothing else. And it shows that you know you're going to go in and learn something. You've got to be open-minded. But I would say, obviously, you have to be a student of the game. Watch as much football as you can. Even during our time at Etihad and even at Liverpool, myself and a couple of other staff always found time to watch a team and really watch a team. You know, you can watch a game of football, but pick a team and watch that team over a long period of time. It's something that myself and Barry Lutis and Jonathan Robinson used to do at the 21s. At the start of the season, we'd all pick a team separate to the work that we were doing, and we would find time to watch that team. And it's amazing the stuff that you pick up, different formations, different styles in terms of how people build, how people press. Someone will come in with an idea and go, I've seen a team building like this. Is that going to help us? Or I've seen such and such do this. Or tell you what, I've seen a team go down to 10 men. This was interesting. Have you seen how they kind of dealt with going down to 10 men? And then sharing your experiences. But if nothing else, you're just watching football, but you're analysing football. And I still do it now. I've been studying this season. I've been watching Barcelona. So whenever I've had chance, I've downloaded the games and I'll just code the game of Barcelona and how they build, as I say, and how they press, what solutions they've got in different moments of the game. Some stuff you'll take, some stuff you won't, but you have a real clear understanding of what it is they're trying to do and how they want to try and overload in certain areas of the pitch and what certain players you need in certain areas of the pitch to execute certain parts of your game plan. How a manager deals with game management. So going a goal up, going a goal down. How does such and such deal with them moments of the game? So watch as much as you can. Pick a team. Follow that team if you can throughout the season. And you'll be amazed at what you've probably picked up. And the discussions that you'll be able to have with people.
Outstanding. Ray, thank you so much. This has been amazing. We've kept you too long, but it was too good. I want to keep it going. Thank you.
No problem. I hope you've been able to get something from that. As I say, thoroughly enjoyed it. And yeah, I look forward to watching and listening to more podcasts. I'll probably give mine a miss, but I'll look forward to the ones after mine.